Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro and his political opponents both have claimed to have won the presidential election. The United States and multiple regional countries have voiced skepticism about the official results, which have handed victory to Maduro. With 80% of the votes counted, Maduro had won more than 51% of the vote, beating the Democratic Unitary Platform candidate Edmundo Gonzalez, who gained more than 44%. This was details put out by the National Electoral Council. But the opposition painted a very different picture of the election results. Opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, who is the main force behind the opposition, said in a news conference that her own records showed that their candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, had received 70% of the vote against 30% secured by Maduro. She said, and I quote, "We won, and everybody knows it. The entire international community knows what happened in Venezuela and how people voted for change," unquote. On Crux Decode, what are the implications of Maduro taking office for a third term? Will the opposition and the wider international community accept this verdict? And most importantly, if a majority of Venezuelans do not accept these results, then will it lead to a civil war between Venezuelan civilians on the streets of Caracas and other cities? If Nicolas Maduro takes office, it will be for the third consecutive 6-year term. It represents the continuity of what is called Chavismo. Maduro is an ardent follower of former President Hugo Chavez, who started in 1999 and then went on to become a polarizing and controversial figure across the world, even as he was deified at home among his own supporters. Maduro has been in power since Chavez's death in 2013. The vote has come for a crucial moment for Venezuela, an oil-rich country which experienced the worst economic crash in recent history. Maduro has blamed foreign sanctions against his regime, saying that Venezuela is the victim of an economic war. Meanwhile, the opposition, which has been galvanized this election cycle, posed the most significant threat to Maduro's grip on power for the last decade. The opposition had promised to restore Venezuela's democracy and rebuild its economy if they won. Eduardo Gonzalez is the candidate of a united opposition whose driving force and power broker is Maria Corina Machado. She was barred from running in the presidential election after she overwhelmingly won in the opposition primaries. Machado went to boarding school in the United States and she attended Yale University. She periodically visited Washington until the government prohibited her from leaving Venezuela. A free market advocate, Machado has been calling for privatizing state assets and opening up Venezuela's economy to private investment. She has indicated she would like to bolster ties with the United States. Throughout the election process, there have been mounting concerns that the opposition will not see a fair contest, as Maduro's government controls all public institutions in Venezuela, including the Supreme Court. Now the opposition fears this entire contested election could be finally arbitrated by the Supreme Court on any claim of electoral fraud. The government has also been accused of rigging votes, which it has denied. Voters turned out in droves throughout Sunday when the vote happened, with many saying that they would leave the country if Maduro won. They were pointing to violent repression and economic collapse under Maduro's rule. After the results were announced, Maduro described it as a triumph of peace, stability, Republican ideals, and the ideas of equality. The results announced by the election authorities were met with mixed emotions in the capital Caracas, with Maduro supporters cheering and celebrating outside the president's official residence. Meanwhile, opposition supporters were seen crying and hugging on the streets. The run-up to the vote was also marred by allegations of foul play. The election campaign saw at least 70 people arbitrarily detained, the majority of whom provided some sort of service to the opposition. There were a dozen online media outlets that were blocked within the country, according to human rights organizations. The results were also met with mixed reactions across the region. The presidents of Peru, Chile, Guatemala, Costa Rica, Argentina, and Uruguay all either denounced the results or cast doubts on the results. Several of them said that they would not recognize Maduro's win. Ahead of the election, many Latin American leaders had urged Nicolas Maduro to commit to stepping down if he were to lose the election. At least one country, though, would be happy with Maduro continuing in office, and that is Russia. A Maduro exit would have jeopardized Russia's power projection in Latin America at a time when Vladimir Putin is seeking to rattle the United States in the Western Hemisphere amid increasing tensions in Europe over Moscow's war against Ukraine. America and its Western partners have been supplying weapons which are crucial to Kiev's defense and which the Kremlin has cast this battle as a battle against NATO. Venezuela has provided Russia with diplomatic support over its invasion of Ukraine, and Maduro has criticized Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky while accusing Western countries of fueling this conflict. Russia sent 2 warships to visit Venezuela earlier this month following a stopover in Cuba. Moscow also has warm ties with Nicaragua. The United States says that such visits pose no threat and they are widely seen as efforts to show force and emphasize that Russia too has friends in the region. Much as Russia sees the United States encroaching on its own sphere of influence with NATO expansion in Eastern Europe, it sees this opportunity to do the exact same by fortifying partnerships in Latin America, namely with countries like Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. Oil producer Venezuela has been the most valuable of these alliances for Russia because of its sheer size and the resources that it has at its command. Maduro's every next move will be closely watched in Moscow just as much as it will be watched in Washington. Analysts say that the socialist Maduro may fear arrest should he lose power. He's been accused of ordering the killings of opposition figures, large-scale torture and corruption, and drug trafficking, among other crimes.